Good evening, everybody. I was about to say good afternoon there, but good evening, everybody, and welcome to this very special webinar that will be looking at the proposed clean air zone in Bradford, and also the funding that will be available for coach and school bus operators. We'll do introductions first. So my name is Andrew McGuinness. I'm regional manager for the North of England for CPT. And also in West Yorkshire, I am chair of the Association of Bus Operators West Yorkshire. And I'll just also introduce our other key people. So Sally, will come over to you for introductions from yourself.
Hi, I'm Sally Jones and I work at Bradford Council on the Clean Air Plan team.
Brilliant, thank you very much, Sally. And we'll go over to Andrew for introductions as well.
Hi everybody, I'm Andrew Whittles and I'm the director of the Air Quality Programme.
Fantastic, thank you, Andrew. And in the background, we also have Paul Osborne from Sistra, who's keeping us right behind the scenes and who've also set up the session. So thanks very much to Paul and Sistra for setting us up on that. I'm just going to cover rules. Sally will be giving the presentation soon. There is the opportunity to ask questions, so please use the chat facility. So I believe you should see in the bottom right-hand corner, if you see what I see, it says, say something nice. So again, please post any questions and we'll come to questions at the end. Make sure that they're nice as well. Also, the session is being recorded and the intention is that this will be available on the Breathe Better Bradford website afterwards. And I see Paul there's just saying hello, everybody. So similar to Teams and to Zoom, please use the chat facility. So for CPT members, we've been doing all that all the way through COVID. I hope I haven't missed anything, but without any further ado, Sally will come over to you for the presentation, please.
Hi, everyone. So I'm going to talk to you tonight, as Andrew said, about our clean air zone plans, the funding that's available, in more detail around this coach fund, obviously, for you guys. But I'm also going to take you through why do we need a clean air zone, a bit more about where it is and which vehicles are affected, where all businesses can find more information, a bit about the publicity that we're doing, and then what funding is available. And then at the end, we'll go into a little bit more detail about this ongoing clean air coach and non-scheduled bus fund, hopefully making that application process a lot easier for you all. As Andrew said, there's an opportunity to ask, we'll do some questions at the end. So why do we need a clean air zone? So Bradford Council's been monitoring air pollution in Bradford for well over 20 years, well, up to 40 years, actually. We've known for a long time that we've got some air pollution problems, but it's become to government's attention in the past few years as well that we're exceeding legal limits. Some of the areas that are of most concern include the A650, Mayo Avenue, Tong Street, Manningham, Queen's Road, and also Saltaire. And those that will help you understand later why we've got the clean air zone shape that we have. If you look on the right, that is a graphic of the city centre. Anything that's red is over the legal limit. So we've got quite a widespread problem. One of the things that one of the questions we quite often get asked is, has lockdown solved our air pollution problem? I'm afraid it hasn't. What we're finding is that traffic flows are now actually in some areas higher than before lockdown. And we think the reasons for this might be a lot more home deliveries, so a lot more vans on the road. And we do think that, and you may have noticed this yourselves, that people aren't taking to public transport like they were before. There's a lot of private car use and we aren't seeing the train use either. So we're not sure in the longer term what will happen with those patterns. But at the moment, we've got some really high traffic flows. The air quality monitoring data that we've got shows that we've still got some illegally high air pollution. The clean air zone that we've planned out will mean that we'll meet these legal limits for nitrogen dioxide across the whole district. And we also know that this will really improve some of the health metrics for the whole district as well. So if you look at this graphic at the bottom, the green one, that sort of darker line there is the actual shape of the clean air zone. But wherever you see a green area, that means that there's a reduction in air pollution. So this shows you that the reductions that we will see extend far beyond the boundary of the clean air zone, and we actually see improvements across the whole of the district from this intervention. So why are we doing this? So the council for a long time wanted to deal with air pollution, but we've now really got a direction from government as well as to how we should be doing this. So we've had a ministerial direction. There's a link on this slide so that you can see that online on the government's website, but we've been actually directed by the ministers to implement a Class C charging clean air zone. And it says that should be implemented as soon as possible, but we've been given a time limit of reaching legal compliance in 2022. So this gives you a map of the clean air zone area in a little bit more detail than that green one from before. You can see that the clean air zone goes out to and including the outer ring road of Bradford. It goes up the Manningham and Canal Road corridor and includes part of Saltaire as well. The clean air zone will come into operation in January 2022. So this slide shows you a little bit more about the standards that are required. So we're looking at commercial vehicles in Bradford. Private cars are not included. We're looking at buses, coaches, heavy goods vehicles, vans, minibuses, and there are also standards for taxis as well. So vehicle operators will be able to check for clean air zone compliance for individual vehicles on the government's vehicle checker. Currently, coaches and buses that aren't compliant with the diesel Euro 6 standard, the charge will be £50 a day in the Bradford clean air zone. Operators can pay the daily charge if their vehicle is non-compliant and they're required to through the government portal. They can do that up to 6 days in advance or 6 days in arrears. We could set up fleet accounts on that government website. Just to say there's limited opportunity for refunds, but there are some circumstances in which refunds are available. The Clean Air Zone portal will actually go live for Bradford at the very end of October. We're currently projected. That's a government timeline. And we will appear on this website link here alongside Bath, Bristol and Portsmouth and Birmingham that are already on there. There'll also be plenty of information, and there's a link here to our Breathe Better website, which will have has already got lots of information on it that's worth having a look at. So in terms of publicising the Clean Air Zone, we've a major billboard and poster campaign out at the moment across the district. So on the side of busy roads, there's smaller posters and some of the digital signage as well in the city centre that you may have seen. We are working with the Highways Agency to look at what we can do on the overhead motorway signs as you come into the district. And there'll be posters and signage up at Artshead Moor as well for people to become aware of what we're doing. We will be having support from government to advertise within a 1 hour drive of Bradford. So that's more of a regional campaign. We've already got ongoing radio adverts with all the local radio stations. We're making the most of social media and putting plenty of information out that way because we know a lot of people have now moved across to social media. We've got some direct communications with interested groups such as the Small Business Associations and Road Haulage Association and obviously Andrew's organisation as well. We've done some direct mailing to businesses and we've plenty of press releases going out and work with trade organisations as well. If you look on the right, the picture you can see, if you spot something that looks similar to that, it's probably talking about the Clean Air Zone. It's a blue Bradford B and the Breathe Better Bradford logo. So this may help you spot that publicity out when you're out and about now you've seen it. So just to take you through, I'm going to take you in brief through all the support available and then we'll focus in on this particular coach fund that we're talking about this evening. So within the package that we got from government, there's just over 1.6 million for sort of the commercial bus routes, and that funding pot has now been the competition has now finished, and we're successfully handing out that funding. We're working with those companies that won that. We've got a similar amount now that we've currently got out to competition that I'm going to talk to you about more for coaches. The grants are up to £16,000 for those, and with just over 100 vehicles that funding should cover. We've got just over 10 million to support taxis, and we're hopeful to be getting some extra support in for electric vehicles as well in that pot soon. We've got just under 6.5 million for heavy goods vehicles. That competition has just finished at the moment, and we are currently evaluating a large number of businesses that have applied for that. We've got over 10 million to support light goods vehicles, and a small pot as well for minibuses that will be going live soon. In addition to these funding packages, we've got a clean air exemption programme. The exemptions are only for vehicles within the Bradford district registered to local businesses, and we're allowing up to 3 vehicles per business. We would prefer that companies do make the most of the funding packages and upgrade their vehicles with preference, rather than keep older ones that are dirtier. But we do see that there's a need for an exemption programme in addition to the support that we've got. There's exemptions that are available for educational, charity and worker social value in Bradford. And there's some national exemptions as well for things like gritters and some of the larger recovery trucks and specialist vehicles. The way that local exemptions will work will be that there'll be a sunset period until the end of 2024. We may be able to extend that if air quality improves, as we hope it will, but we have had to put a caveat in that if we don't see the improvement that we need to see, those exemptions may have to come to an end at that point. We can also give shorter sunset periods where there's longer lead times for new vehicles. So where we've made an agreement with somebody that their vehicle will be upgraded and they can't get hold of that new vehicle, what we can do is exempt their existing vehicle till the new one arrives. So local exempted vehicles will be kept on a local whitelist, and there's the national exemptions for things like blue light vehicles, etc., that are on the national whitelist. You can register an expression of interest for the exemption programme on the website, on the Breathe Better website now. The application process will open in October or the end of October. Taxis will not be able to apply for an exemption. There's different rules for taxis. So the light good vehicle scheme and the minibus support is available to businesses in the local district. It's not a competition. It's done on a sort of first come, first served, easier process where you just a requirement to be eligible. Applications have been done through an online portal on the Breathe Better website, and award offers are made by letter. And the grant is paid on evidence of purchase of a compliant vehicle and the sale of the older vehicle and removing that from the fleet. So just to come on to the Clean Air Coach and non-scheduled bus fund that we're all interested in tonight. This takes the form of a competition, and the reason for that is because we are opening this up to businesses outside of Bradford that come into Bradford and spend time in our clean air zone. So that means that we need to make it a competitive process. To do that and make this a compliant process, we have to run it through the system called Your Tender that you may well be already registered on and finding opportunities to tender for on there. The competition is open at the moment, and it will close on the 30th of September at 2 p.m. Do keep an eye on these deadlines. They are have to be adhered to strictly. So it is important that you take note of the closing date and make sure you get any application in before that. So like I said, it's available to businesses outside of the district, but the frequency of operation in the clean air zone is a key criteria. So you'll be competing against other businesses and need to show us how often you come in to make yourself a priority for upgrade. The evidence that you provide to us, we need to know where your business is. We try not to be too prescriptive about what evidence we need. I've got a little bit more detail later, and there's a lot of detail in the guidance notes on the documentation. But things like contracts, business rates are good to make sure you can show us where your business is based. But delivery notes, orders, letters from customers, and all things like that are evidence that we can look at. So the grants themselves are up to £16,000, and they can be used. We appreciate there aren't that many options for coaches, but for buses, there's retrofit options, and it can also be used to be put forward to new or second-hand vehicles. The sunset periods are useful for long delivery lead-ins. So you need to register on the Your Tender portal, and there's a link to that at the bottom of this slide. So once you get onto Your Tender, just bear with me one. Got a barking dog in the background that I'm trying to hush, but I'm not sure I'm going to be able to do that. Just bear with me one moment.
Just while Sally is dealing with the barking dog, can I just remind everybody that the chat facility is available if there's any questions that emerge through the presentation. And Sally, I hope you've dealt with I
think so. I've shouted at her. I don't know if it'll work, but anyway.
We'll see.
Yeah. She may start up again. I don't know. Anyway, yes. So to give you a little bit more detail on how to register on Your Tender, there is a help portal, and the address for that is at the top of this slide, and it takes you through the registering process. So if you look on the left-hand side, it shows you can click down through the different areas on there, and it shows you how to register on the portal. It sets out the requirements, and it shows you where you enter your contact information for the individual, the company information, the description of your business, and the opportunities that you would be interested in. You have to tick a terms and conditions box, and then there's a confirmation page at the end. It's a bit small on here, but it will become obvious to you when you go to that link and have a look through, and it just familiarises you with the process that you will meet once you go on to register on Your Tender. So once you registered, you would log into the system. You get like an invite back, and you register on the system using the link that I've given you here. Now, this is where I think companies have hit the most problems within our heavy goods vehicle one that's you use this system. For those companies that aren't familiar with Your Tender, it is a little bit clunky. But what I would say is if you're not registered on there and familiar with it, you could be really missing out on some big contracts for your company. All of the local authorities in the Yorkshire region use this system, and I think we put out about £4.5 billion worth of contracts on there. So we really want all our smaller local companies to be registered on it, actually, and this is a really good time to start using it. So yes, once you've logged into the system, you use this link to log in, and then you click on Find Opportunities on the home screen, and this is where you're trying to find. You're looking with keywords for things that your business might be interested in. And this system actually automatically generates opportunities and sends them to you once you're properly registered on it. So it'll send you contracts that you might be interested in bidding for. But for the purposes of this competition, you would enter the title of the funding, which is the Bradford Clean Air Coach and Non-Scheduled Bus Fund. You would put that or certain keywords from it in the search box and press go. That should find you the project. So you then click on the title of it. This effectively registers your interest on it, and it gives you the opportunity to click register interest in this opportunity. At this point, you go back to the home page, and there's a recently added tab. And what it will have done is added the competition to your kind of area because you've registered an interest on it. You then click on the title of the project, and that then takes you into where you can download the funding application form, all the related documents, and you can start responding to the competition. So this is the bit that many companies have reported finding a little bit tricky, but these step-by-step instructions here should help you be able to do that. And obviously, you know, there's people that can help on the helpline at Bradford, but really we'd ideally get you logged in, and any problems that you have then can be dealt with through the Your Tender system via clarification problems. I'll come on to that in a little bit more detail later. So once you are into the system and you've downloaded all your documents, you will, what we'd first like you to do is to look through and read the guidance documents. It's only about 12 pages, but it just gives you a chance to see that you're eligible, how we're going to score it and give you a full understanding of what you're filling in. What's really key here, as mentioned earlier, the timelines. We need to make sure that things are in. So do leave yourself plenty of time to pull together your application. So the feedback we've had so far is that the form itself is pretty straightforward to fill in, but there's a few points to note. So make sure you fill in all the tabs on there. It's basically like an Excel spreadsheet with different tabs. The instructions tab is just basically making sure that you've read the guidance notes. There's a declaration on the second tab that you need to fill in. And then we're asking you for your company details and details of your whole fleet of vehicles. This is not scored, it's just for information and to see information about your whole fleet and where you are based. Then the vehicles tab, you only need to fill that in for the vehicles that you want funding for, that are non-CAZ compliant vehicles that will attract charges and that you would like to upgrade or retrofit. So don't fill your whole fleet in on the vehicles tab, just the ones that you want funding for. Then you have the opportunity to fill in an impact on business free text area, where you'll tell us in your own words how the clean air zone affects your business and how it would affect you in your future operations. And then what you would do is upload evidence to support that statement and what you've said about the impact on your business. So if you only go in once in a blue moon, the impact isn't that great. But if you're in and out of the clean air zone every day and would attract charges, obviously the impact on your business is pretty significant. So the evidence requirement, so we've deliberately made evidence non-specific, and that might feel a little bit frustrating, but what it is we know that different companies will have different things that they can give to us. We don't want there to be any right answers here. We want you to just give us the best information that you've got that proves in the statement how you currently operate and anything about your future operations and how often you were in and out of the clean air zone. So within the guidance notes, there's a little bit more detail around this, but I've tried to pull some key things out. We'd really like you to prove where you're based. So if you're based in the clean air zone, that's an important piece of information that we need, and we would like to have some proof of that. The proof of the operations can be delivery notes, invoices, orders, or spreadsheets of customers, letters from customers. What I would say is try and send us the most succinct evidence that you've got. So we don't want thousands of delivery notes. We would rather have something that states how often you go in and out and proves that than thousands of different delivery notes. But there's no right answers to this. Just please give us the best evidence that you have. Please note that we appreciate that some of the information you're giving us about your customers and your orders and everything is commercially sensitive. We understand that, and all the evidence will be confidentially handled within GDPR protocols. We're not going to put it on our website or anything. It's all will be handled very carefully and sensitively. So when it comes to uploading the evidence, you upload it directly into your tender. Please do label it with the name of your company and the vehicle to which it relates. Here's a list of the valid file types. You'll see there's plenty. Nobody's had any trouble with this as far as I'm aware. But the maximum file size you can upload is 1,000 megabytes. So there's plenty of room on there to put whatever evidence you would like to put on. So time for questions. Just to say around questions whilst you're undergoing your application, some of the questions might come to light when you actually get started on your application and registering on your tender. Your tender system, for transparency, if you ask a question, we need everybody else that's applying to see that question and what answer we gave, just so that we know everybody's had the same information with it being a competition. So do check the clarifications log. They call questions clarifications on there. Check the clarifications log, as your question may already have been asked and an answer there for you. The deadline for clarification questions is the 22nd of September at 2 p.m. So you really need to have had a good look at it a few days before then so that you can let us know if you've got any queries. There's lots of information on the website about all the things I've talked about tonight in a lot more detail. So please do go and have a look at our website as well if you've time to do that. Thanks very much for listening. I hope all that made sense. But if you've got any questions, please do fire away. And I think Andrew might might help us pull out some questions from the chat, Andrew.
Yeah, I've been taking some notes. So
great.
Great, thanks very much for that, Sally. And we will be launching a test of the full presentation for all participants later. But seriously, though, that the presentation will be available on the website, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Before I go to the questions from participants, there's just a couple of clarifications I had. So one question I had in advance was the process on your tender, which I think that should have been answered. The person who asked that question is on the session, so if that wasn't, please raise that. But as I said, the detail will be available on the website. I just want to clarify on exemptions. So for operators based in Bradford, there is an exemption for operators within the city of Bradford. But in terms of the education exemption, that's to any operator, I believe, running educational services or educational prioritised within Bradford. That doesn't need to be a Bradford operator, does it?
No. So in terms of exemptions, to let everybody know, every company is allowed up to 3 vehicle exemptions, where a company can show that they're doing either educational or charity work. If they're doing educational work and the vehicle is equal to or better than Euro 4, then we will allow those exemptions as well. And they don't necessarily have to be based in Bradford. They could be bringing school children from some other authority into Bradford, or they could be taking school children from Bradford to another authority.
Thank you, Andrew. And to clarify, the Clean Air Zone is scheduled to come in January 2022. So if an operator doesn't have any of the exemptions or sunset periods, the charge for coach operators, the daily charge will be effective from the start of the Clean Air Zone.
Yes, so it'll be, the charges will be available from the start of the Clean Air Zone. We anticipate, we're planning for January 2022. And I think a general point, just to make to everybody is obviously the number of Clean Air Zones is increasing. Greater Manchester have just announced that the whole of Greater Manchester will be a Clean Air Zone. So what I would point out is where we will offer exemptions, certain exemptions for people to come into the Bradford Clean Air Zone, for businesses based in Bradford, obviously to be aware that those exemptions aren't available when you go into other authorities necessarily.
Great, thanks, Andrew. And going through the questions on chat, and some excellent questions here, all very relevant. So first of all, Mick from CTS, can you get the sunset period while waiting for the delivery of a new vehicle? And I guess given the supply chain issues with retrofit, and there is a huge backlog, and also COVID getting in the way as well. So I'll ask that question for retrofit as well.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, we will require sort of evidence that an order's been placed. And we're obviously trying to minimise those, but we'll work with operators once we know how long they're going to have to wait. Yeah.
Yeah. And just to say that what we'll be doing is launching the exemption programme towards the end of October, once the government's vehicle checker goes live. And so those exemptions are recorded on what we call a whitelist, a local whitelist. We'll record the details of the vehicle, how long's needed until the new vehicle arrives, and they won't incur charges for accessing the CAZ until the new vehicle arrives.
Great, thank you both. Next question from Dave. Can minibus companies from Calderdale apply for grants? And I'm just going to widen that question out a little bit. I think the answer is yes, if there's the required evidence. But I'm just going to broaden that question out on if you have a surplus of applications over and beyond the funding limit, then how would you prioritise? And I think that was covered part of the way through, but might be useful just to hear that again.
Yeah, I think just to be clear on that is that, so with the coach and non-scheduled bus services, anybody can apply irrespective of where they're based. All we're looking for is the frequency that they access the CAZ. So local companies obviously based in the CAZ are going to be affected on a daily basis. If somebody's coming from North Yorkshire, they can come in. As far as minibuses, though, that will be part of the van and minibus programme, and that funding is only available for businesses based in Bradford. The government only allocated sufficient funding for Bradford. However, I think we've around just over £10 million of funding there. What we will do is, if it looks as though we have some funding that we can put it wider, then we'll start to look at a call for businesses based outside of Bradford that may want to apply for that funding, but subject to us covering obviously the businesses in Bradford first. But that is separate from this coach fund.
Good, thanks, Andrew. And I think that answers the question from Phil Smith, CPT's coaching manager, as well. We'll move on to another question from Mick. So we have registered with the Your Tender system. It is difficult to follow, and the process does not seem simple for a small company to follow. If we miss something, will the system let us know if anything further is required? So an operator isn't going to be penalised if they've failed to fill in the box. Will the system or a human let operators know if further details required?
So there are two things there. One thing, because it is a competition, we don't know, and we can't sort of like access whether anybody has applied to confirm whether we've received an application until we close the process and then open the bids. But just to say, we've talked through the process with other companies, and there is a prompt. So when you're filling in the application form, it tells you whether it's complete or incomplete. Mm-hmm. And then at the end, we've had a few people who sort of like said, well, it didn't seem to be allowing them to upload it. But then when you look, there is a big green button that says submit. So what you're doing is really downloading the documents, filling them in, and then basically uploading the documents and submitting them. And I think it does then tell you, the person who submitted them, that it has been submitted.
That sounds straightforward. I would just ask if anybody is still stuck, where or who can they go to for assistance if they're still stuck?
So if somebody's, there are two ways. If you're in the Your Tender system, then all questions, and it may be a question that could be posed right at the beginning of the process. So if somebody thinks they're going to have a problem, rather than waiting until the last day, is to pose a question, a clarification on Your Tender, and say, what is the process, or how can I guarantee that my application has been uploaded? And I think that we'll give more information about that. We do have a call centre, but they can't give specific information about the process to individual companies because it will breach competition rules. But I think if somebody's struggling to get onto Your Tender in the first place, we are in a position we can give advice and help people if they are trying to get on there. It's one of the systems. I think that the key thing is everybody try and get on Your Tender, get registered, start looking at the documentation, get your interest registered, and then if you do have any issues, with plenty of time then to talk to people, but what I would advise, don't leave it to the very last minute if you're having any problems. Get on early, get to use the system early, and hopefully it should be fairly straightforward.
Great. I'm trying to multitask here and scroll back and forward because I'm seeing more questions emerge. And I saw Alan said if you have trouble applying, we'll be able to speak to the real person. I think Andrew, you've just answered that. And going back to the education exemption, Mick was asking if you're bringing school children to visit venues like the Alhambra, will it be exempted? I think the answer to that is yes, as long as it's an educational journey.
If it's an educational journey, I think that I think the key thing though is that if the bus or coach is being used majoritively for other functions, and then once in a blue moon you might run a school, then it wouldn't really be classified as a kind of a school bus. But if you are, you can show that you're using the bus for school and educational purposes, then yes, if it was an educational trip to the Alhambra, then yes, it will be included.
So will that be the vehicle that's exempt, and you have to provide evidence of that, or is it the journey? I mean, do you have to register each journey? No,
it's the vehicle. The cameras register the vehicle. It's the vehicle that they will recognise, not the journey. So once your vehicle is either upgraded and compliant or has a general exemption, then the cameras will always recognise that. But it is a good point. It's something that we thought about earlier, where somebody might make one ad hoc journey into the CAZ for an educational purpose. So when we publish, we've got information on the website regarding our exemptions. It may be that we do look to see whether there can be any specific one-off exemptions. However, usually, as you can probably imagine, setting up the system to put on a whitelist and get the cameras recognise that can be quite a long process. So it wouldn't be something we'd be able to do quickly.
Understood. And Ian at Tetley's has come up with a great point. Private hire work has been on hold for 18 months through the pandemic and has only gradually been returning since July. So is historical evidence okay pre 2020, 2019?
Yeah, we fully understand that a lot of coach operators may not have done much work at all over the last year. And therefore, what we would say is if you've got any historical data pre-pandemic that you were accessing the CAZ, or you've got a future coach program to show that you will be coming into the CAZ, then we take that into account.
Okay, and Dave was asking a question. If we run a regular service to the airport and operate from outside of Bradford, can we apply for a grant? And I think as long as the evidence and regularity is provided, then the answer is yes.
I think yeah. So your end venue that you go into might be outside the CAZ, but I think what we'd be looking for is to show that the journey from wherever it's coming from to the airport is going through the CAZ on a regular basis.
Great. Alan was asking, can you show us the initial start screen for your tender? I don't know how simple that is on here. I don't know if that will be possible, or is it a case of give it a go and hopefully the system will support you, and if you're stuck, please shout. I don't know which would be.
Yeah, I'm not sure I can do that other than the slides that I've put up tonight, Andrew. But those links that I gave you on those slides take you to help that takes you through it step by step, and I think that'll be really useful to anybody having trouble.
Yeah.
If you've still got trouble beyond that, actually getting registered, it's time to call the help desk.
And we can help. Just to say what we will do is we will be putting this webinar onto the website, and I think what we can do is look at taking a screenshot for the initial steps to put those on as well. We can have a look at doing that as well. But like Sally says, once you're in the system, get in there, get used to the system, and then you know that you're in and you're understanding it. If you're struggling to get into the system, then yes, by all means, get in touch with us, and we'll try and help you get on the system.
So the best advice is start soon, and if you are really stuck, then please flag that. And the deadline is actually my birthday, the 30th of September. I just thought I would get that in as well. So just going back to education exemption, how is the education for schoolwork granted? What evidence is required?
Well, principally, we'd require that either you're running a school bus service, or that you've got regular contracts with school educational, and it can be anything from primary schools to special needs schools to universities to colleges, to show that you have regular contracts with those companies. I think if somebody sort of like, once a year may take a school trip, then we wouldn't really classify that as having an educational purpose per se. But like Sally says, it's for people to submit their evidence, and then we can review the evidence. So if you're in the CAZ or you're in the district, there are people, for instance, who will be just outside the CAZ but can't go anywhere without dropping onto the ring road and being in the clean air zone. It's where companies are perhaps more remote from Bradford, where the level of evidence is we do need to see that you have contracts with schools or have had contracts with schools in the district. So,
great. Dave was asking, when will Out of Bradford know that they can apply for minibus grants? I guess you mean, David, outside of Bradford. And I think, Andrew, your answer on that was the minibus funding is only, the smaller vehicle and minibus funding, I think it was at Bradford only. But then if there's an underspend, you may consider that later. Was that correct?
We would, yes. It's one of those things that for the larger vehicle sector, the HGVs, the coaches, With basically the important thing is access and making it a competition. This is why we're running it as a competition, so it gives people outside the district a chance to show that they're coming in and they can apply for the funding. The government, though, in terms of vans and minibus, would only allocate us funding for our. So basically, I mean, if the government ever did want to give us enough funding for the north of England, we'd be happy to administer it, but they don't. They just give you enough for that particular sector. But what we will do is as we run in the scheme, if we get to a point where we're confident that we've covered all our local businesses and we've still got excess, we will open that up wider and look at criteria for accessing companies outside the district.
Yeah, and then the Mick was saying we may make between 3 and 10 education journeys a week, typically using 1 to 7 vehicles. The journeys, although not weekly or daily, they are frequent. So how will the system cope with that? So I guess what we're talking about there is the operator will be making lots of education journeys. It's not necessarily always the same vehicle, I think was the point. But I would suggest that there would be that would be a reasonable frequency of each vehicle there.
Yeah.
So
just to say, Andrew, on that, on the form, you fill in the details for each individual vehicle that you're applying for funding for. And there are questions there around what percentage of the vehicle's time is spent in the clean air zone, how often they enter. So all that will become apparent as you fill in the form in where we need that information.
Yeah, understood. Thanks, Sally. Ian was saying, I was thinking more of a school trip from Bradford to Leeds. So I think that's going back to the education exemption. But again, that would work in reverse, wouldn't it, if you're taking Bradford school children into Leeds?
Well, I think it's saying if you take people from Leeds to Bradford.
Sorry, I got the wrong way.
Yeah, it's basically it's irrespective of where the bus starts. It counts for where the bus starts, but yeah, it's so if they're coming from Leeds into Bradford, if they can evidence that they're going to a location that's inside the CAZ or have to transit the CAZ, then that's evidence that they can put forward. Obviously, we can't tell people what is a right answer and a wrong answer. It's for people to kind of put as much evidence forward, and it is a competition. But yeah, if people can show that they are coming into the clean air zone, that's entirely the purpose of this competition.
But then vice versa. I mean, if you had a regular contract or a vehicle regularly taking school kids from Bradford to Leeds, say, for example, that is still education exemption territory.
It is. If you're running a school journey from somewhere in Bradford that runs out through the CAZ out to somewhere else, it applies equally as much. And I was just looking at I think David's made the point. I didn't read the earlier question, but in terms of Bradford and the minibuses, it will be open to everybody based in the Bradford district. It's just the fact it's people based outside the Bradford district that we can't accommodate initially. So on the minibus side.
Thanks, Andrew. Mick was making the point, we're a depot just the wrong side of the river, 100 metres just outside the zone. I didn't realise you're so close, Mick. As coaches leave the depot, they always enter in the clean air zone. So does the depot have to be strictly inside to be part of the first batch of claims?
No. I think that, basically you can't operate without entering the zone, which is, for businesses that are either very near to the zone, can't operate without touching the zone or going through the zone or are based in the zone. That's really good evidence just in itself by the location of the address.
And Mick, there's a fellow operator on here where originally, with the original proposed Leeds clean air zone, we had the same issue. So again, that's fairly consistent. Yeah, Dave was just feeding back on Bradford minibuses again. Mick was asking a question that I think Ian asked before, so that was answered. So the frequency event in the clean air zone, will you accept evidence from 2018 and 19 as information from through the pandemic was non-existent? I think the answer to that was simply
we what we're saying, we do understand that it's going to be hard for some businesses to show evidence because there's just been no trade for a while. I think that obviously if they've got a future program, they could show that. But yes, if they can show historical evidence, and can show there's a trend that is likely to continue, then we're happy to accept that evidence. So
Ian
just
was
to
just
say,
yeah,
Andrew,
sorry.
on that mixed question there, we do ask about future activity as well. So if Mick can show us his older evidence and give us evidence that that will continue in his future contracts, that'll score more highly for him.
Yeah. So yeah, Ian's just going back on the education exemption. So if a Leeds coach enters the clean air zone on an educational visit, how can an exemption be granted? And again, I guess it's down to the frequency that happens and the classification of that vehicle that is making the journey.
Yeah, what we're getting at, if somebody is outside the district and are bringing children into the district for an educational purpose on a regular basis, then we can include them within the exemption process. However, if it's just an ad hoc visit now and again for an educational purpose, they're coming in from outside. So it boils down to the evidence they can provide, but we can't provide an exemption to every coach company in the country that might come into the zone once a year or something. So really, the educational, the exemptions for companies apply to the Bradford businesses in educational terms. If you can show that you're doing regular, consistent educational work, then we can include exemptions for companies that are based outside the district as well.
I know exactly what you're going to say here, but I'm going to ask the question anyway. So say, for example, an operator making perhaps what they would think would be a frequent, so let's say a fortnightly, I don't know, let's say a weekly contract or educational trip into Bradford, you wouldn't necessarily define that vehicle as being wholly used for education. Do you have a cut-off? That's just what I'm looking at. Do you have an exact specification?
We haven't got it defined to that kind of point. We've got an exemption policy developed, and as I say, we've defined it in broad terms at the moment, and there will be more information put on the website over the next month. But really, what we're looking at is that we'd like what we'd really like is for people to upgrade the coaches so that they're improving the air quality of Bradford. But if people can show that they are doing regular education work and have contracts to that effect, then we can classify them as an educational purpose. And if they've got a bus that's a coach that's Euro 4 or better, then we will consider those for an exemption.
Okay, thanks, Andrew. Some more detail to emerge on that on education, but again, the message, as Andrew just said, would be to apply for the upgrade, to apply for the retrofit of the vehicle funding, or the education exemption is there, but we don't have that exactly defined for perhaps infrequent. So more detail to come on that. So Alan was asking, are you able to input the exempt vehicles in time for January 2022 start into the database? The answer is yes.
So once we open, the vehicle checker will come live on I think it's the 25th of November. So people can check the vehicles, whether they're compliant or non-compliant. And then the application process will be open. And we have kind of the staff in place who will be able to take the details and make sure it's recorded in time for the CAZ to go live. If somebody applies for an exemption and it's a valid application for an exemption, but the exemption possibly could be delayed by a few days or whatever, then we would be in a position, like Sally said, to basically waive any charge.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Andrew. Yeah, I see the whole education exemption is of some concern, as we see from Mick and Dane especially. So I don't think we're going to get any further detail on that, but what I would suggest is you did talk about the whitelist of vehicles for regular journeys, and you also said that you may consider or would consider perhaps a process for individual journeys. Did I read that correctly, Andrew?
Well, it's something that we could consider if we can. It's one of these things. If we can process things like that, what we don't want to do is kind of sort of like we're conscious that there are these ad hoc journeys sometimes, and that where schools are paying for them, obviously there's a cost imperative and everything like that. What I would say, Andrew, I think we'll be having further conversations with yourselves And when we publish the final detail of the exemption programme, we'll clarify exactly what that means. But at the moment, what we're anticipating is people who can show they're doing regular education work to get an exemption for the bus. Whether we're in a position to offer one-off exemptions for a visit that might be periodic, then we'll have to look at that, and we'll let the coach industry know.
Okay, understood. But I think you appreciate that as a specific area of concern, given the marginal nature of education. So I think that's one still on the radar. And as Mick was saying, operators need to know, because it needs to be factored into higher rates, and also the balance of the economic considerations of new vehicle purchases. So I think that's one we'll keep close contact on, Andrew.
We will, and just to emphasise as well, as I say, the whole of Greater Manchester now is a clean air zone. Liverpool will be, Sheffield will be, Newcastle will be. There is a good chance that Leeds will become a clean air zone again if their pollution levels continue to rise. So with the clean air zones around, when we're looking at exemptions, remember that an exemption in Bradford wouldn't generate an exemption anywhere else. So you've got to think of where you're taking your coaches, and is it worthwhile accessing this funding so that you know that you're compliant in all the clean air zones.
And all of those clean air zones are in my patch as well, unfortunately. So going back to Alan's new question. Do you need to say if you're planning an upgrade of an exhaust or to change your vehicle when applying? What exemption period for either scenario? So that'll be a sunset period.
Yeah. So if anybody's wants to get a retrofit or is looking for a new vehicle, what they do is show us the purchase order or the invoice and when the delivery date is due. And then what we do is put the non-compliant vehicle onto the white list with a date that it will transfer over, and they can run that vehicle under a sunset period until the compliant vehicle comes onto fleet.
Mm-hmm.
And just to say, it does ask you that on the form as well, whether you're planning to do a retrofit or upgrade. So those questions are asked.
Yeah. I think there was a question as well, just coming back to somebody. So one of the things to consider as well, if you're based in Greater Manchester, or you're based in Sheffield, or you're based in Newcastle, those cities, as part of their implementation programme, will have the same coach fund that we're operating as well. And so if, for instance, you're outside of our district, but you are in another clean air zone area, then it's worthwhile checking with that authority to whether you are able to access funding in that area as well. And I think another question that came up previously is where somebody, I think that they got funding for 5 vehicles under the Leeds Clean Air Zone programme and asked whether they could apply for further funding. The key thing is you can't apply for double funding for the same vehicle. So if you receive funding from Leeds for a coach, we can't then fund that coach. But if you've got other non-compliant vehicles, if they haven't been funded by anywhere else, you're still able to apply for our funding.
I would also add that we as CPT, as the trade body, have raised with government nationally the issue where funding for retrofit or clean air support, as Andrew said, is very dependent on your geography. So if you're nowhere near a clean air zone, for example, you're less likely to be supported. So we are pushing for a national clean air fund, a national clean air policy for coaches. But again, that's work in process. I'm conscious of time, so just starting to wrap up. Dave was saying, will exemptions be allowed from the Calderdale area? I think we've covered that, Dave. It would all be down to education exemption, or you're able to apply for funding. That sounds about right, doesn't it, Sally and Andrew?
Yeah.
Okay, it's Calderdale, yeah.
Yeah. So
just all loads more questions coming in.
So no, in terms of Calderdale, in terms of exemptions, as I say, if somebody can show us that they're running a school bus into Bradford or from Bradford to another area, then we can offer exemptions. But if they can't and they're based outside the district, we're not in a position to offer exemptions.
Yeah, Nick was just making the point about West Yorkshire PT and why you cannot specifying either vehicles. That's a perfectly fair point. I'll take that up directly with them. Fiona was saying that. Can you let us know how the grants are going to be awarded? So do you purchase a vehicle first, or do you get the grant and then purchase a vehicle?
No, so just to be clear, we don't pay the grant, right? So if somebody's already bought a vehicle, we can't pay retrospectively for a vehicle. So we have asked before, they bought a vehicle 6 months ago, could they apply for a grant for it? The answer is no. But what we do is, once the close of the program takes place, we evaluate the bids with roughly, it takes us about a fortnight to evaluate them. Then we notify you if you're successful or not successful. And what it is it'll be a letter to say you are eligible for the grant, go and buy your vehicle. You might have a vehicle that you've sort of like sounded somebody out that you know which vehicle you want. You may not know at this stage which vehicle you want, but what you can do is, once you've then gone and purchased the vehicle, we then release the funds, the funding for that vehicle.
Thanks, Andrew. I see Ian's just come back on the education point. Again, I know I'm not going to get a more detailed answer from you on that, but again, I think that's amplifying the education issue. Regular trips is fine. I just think we need to perhaps look at the perhaps infrequent, especially in the short term as well. But then Alan was asking a question about payback if you sell a vehicle. It's usually 5 years, I believe. Is that the case?
I think for this, Sally, I'm not mistaken. Basically, what we somebody could get a grant, upgrade the vehicle. If they basically then sold the vehicle straight away and then chose to operate a non-compliant vehicle or no vehicle at all, we would sort of like perhaps be looking at whether that's compliance. But if somebody upgrades a vehicle and runs it through the first year of the clean air zone, then I'm not sure, Sally, whether we've got the 5-year rule on this. I think it's 2.
I think it's 2 years.
It's 2 years.
But within all the documents, there's the terms and conditions that our legal services have set out, and that kind of detail is in there. And that document is available as one of the downloads. So if anyone wants to look at that kind of nitty-gritty detail, it's all available within the application documents.
Thanks, Sally. I'm going to take Mick's point as the last one. So you say the maximum grant doesn't even cover the deposit for a cleaner zone vehicle. Lead-in times at least 6 months. So the 16,000 is either for retrofit or towards a compliant vehicle. So I think Mick's point is, if you're purchasing a vehicle, I don't know if you just want to quickly answer back on Mick's point.
I think what Mick's saying is that the grant isn't high enough. I think it's probably to characterise that question. Just to say, it's a level that's set by government. We did ask for £20,000 per bus, per coach, but the government basically set a national level at 16,000. So to some people who may have bought a coach, and it's still worth a lot of money and weren't looking to transfer over, as I say, for local organisations or companies doing certain types of work, the exemptions are available. I think where it will help is where probably coach companies were looking to upgrade a vehicle within the next year or so, and this helps them to accelerate that purchase.
Interestingly, sorry, Andrew, go on.
No, I was just going to say that the grants are never aimed to cover the full cost of replacing a vehicle. And that's a facet of the way that the government approaches this.
I was just going to say, Greater Manchester, I'm fairly sure I've seen the standard 16,000 for retrofit, but a much higher figure if operators are going to invest in new coaches. So is the additional money there? I know you may not know the answer, you may be guessing at this. I guess that must be funded locally in GM.
It's interesting that the government have been consistent until they stop being consistent. So what we found with the government is ourselves, Bath, Birmingham, Portsmouth, Newcastle, Sheffield, everybody are being given a certain level of funding. Manchester seems to have got a slightly different level of funding, but what we found is, for instance, Bradford has been given around £35 million to develop mitigation measures for the clean air zone. In Greater Manchester, they have 120 million, but that's split between 10 local authorities. So the cost per local authority, when you look at the funding they've got, they may be offering higher levels, but to less people. So, what we found with their taxi funding, they've got slightly higher level of funding, but they're not being able to fund everybody, whereas our funding is aimed at what we believe are the non-compliant vehicles in the district or peripheral to the district.
Appreciate that, and I think at that point we are at our hour, and I see Dave was making a point there about tourists into Bradford, and I guess for the support you would hope that that's not the case, and Alan's making the political point there, which I'm sure we couldn't possibly comment on. But in terms of next steps, I don't know, Sally, Andrew, if you just want to give a quick closing about next steps, what operators need to do, and if there's any questions that they think of later.
Yeah, so what we'll do is we'll put this presentation and the webinar onto the website. We'll be putting some additional information, including the guidance documents, on the website for people to look at. In terms of applying, what we recommend is everybody goes to Your Tender and registers and becomes familiar with the Your Tender website. If people have a problem getting onto Your Tender, then they can contact us and we'll provide assistance with that. Once they're in the Your Tender system, then if there are any questions, they have to go through the clarification process so that everybody knows the answer and everybody's treated equally. I think that we've still got this issue regarding ad hoc educational visits, and I think that what we'll be doing is over the next few weeks is looking at finalising that policy. But obviously it's a trade-off between wanting compliance in terms of air quality, but also trying to assist companies that do work regularly with schools as well.
Great, thank you, appreciate that. And I think all that remains is to say thank you very much to Sally, to Andrew, and to Paul, who's been working away, beaving in the background and keeping us all alive on the screen at the right time. So I think, as Andrew said, please keep an eye on the website, and again, please try the Your Tender very soon. But good night, everybody, and take care. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Good night, everyone.